Robert Bala's headed to Florida.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, we've got a really interesting show coming at all day, every day or today, because there's a lot of bad news going around, we'll just say. We're going to end on a positive note. We're talking about Jordan Washington and Washington's running back unit, because Scotty Graham was really quick to shout him out at Monday's press conference. Seems like there's a lot of stuff in the works for him. We're really excited about that. We're going to get to it. But Esun Tafa, Washington's top commit in the 2026 class, has officially backed off his pledge. No surprise there, Lars, but we're going to get to that in a little bit after the whole Brennan Carroll news. But big news of the day, which was a bit of a surprise. Robert Bala is taking a co-defensive coordinator position at Florida. And Lars, right off the top, this one, again, it was a surprise to us. Our insiders were the first to know this morning. We shot out a little text saying, hey, just heads up, he's going to be interviewing. Came together really, really quickly.
Yeah, we just talked about this on yesterday's show, and we talked about, hey, all the coaches were engaged and all those sorts of things, but we did acknowledge Robert Bala's head was elsewhere. We were way off on the reason, but
yeah, dead wrong. We missed by a mile.
And I will say, we are speculating that it was related, but it was very clear that Bala wasn't as Taylor Mays was very locked in. Obviously, Ryan Walters had a ton of questions, et cetera, et cetera. But the one kind of elephant in the room was like, why did Bala not get a promotion? Richardson did, from cornerbacks coach to secondary coach. Bala could have easily, we made the case for him, at least a co-DC title, stay at inside linebackers, given the effort that he put in on the recruiting trail, landing 2 4-star players and playing a significant role in a couple of 3-stars, the impact that he had on the room last year, and just kind of the overall vibe that he brought. He was one of those loud, not necessarily a rah-rah guy, but he was a very passionate coach. And it really kind of, I put this out on Twitter this morning, where it's like, okay, like, why? Like, because at the time, the way that it was phrased from the reporting down in Gainesville was it was an off the field role. And it was like, wait a minute, why? That seems like that seems like a step back. Now, again, we know why now, and it's actually a step up because he has a co-DC title. And that was kind of what we talked about before the show, which was, why did Jedd just not give him a co-DC title? What was the harm in doing that? Because he certainly put in the work this past season to earn it.
Oh, 100%. Couple things there where, yes, you're right. It was listed as an off-field role. Somebody we talked to with a lot of knowledge of the situation said, yes, it would still have been a linebackers coach position. The title would have just been different. And it seems like, along with what probably a pay raise coming from the co-DC title, that the just all of that is what got it done. A title change per se is probably the best way to go about that. But this is probably, Lars, I don't think I'm overstating this. This is the biggest loss we've seen from this coaching staff this offseason. Bala was somebody who was really popular amongst recruits. He did a really, really good job in the 25 class with Zajas Randy Saleh, Jonathan Epperson, and Donovan Robinson. Did a great job in the transfer portal, bringing in 3 guys, as well as having one in the 2026 class in Wasi Lalobi. So he did a really good job recruiting that position at a very high level from day one. So I think that's one of the biggest losses. We saw Carson Bruner, Alfonso Tupatala, Kamori House. We saw them all really level up their level of play during the 2024 season. And a lot of that was thanks to Robert Bala. So off-field, on-field, big loss in both categories. And on top of that, where it does look like, hey, if a co-DC title was all that was needed to keep him around, that's really, really unfortunate. And, obviously there's nothing you can do about that now.
But it's, like, Jedd's been around the game long enough. Like, this is, again, what we talked about, why I was so concerned about the Kalen DeBoer hire. When you hire a coach with 1 year of P4 experience, it's like, does he know how to be a head coach, manage a roster, be a CEO, just understand it? I would think Jedd would. Like, from all indications, again, you took care of John Richardson. And it almost, I almost wonder if that kind of left some salt in the wound, where it's like, well, you're promoting one of your guys from Arizona. I'm just speculating on this because it's
fair. It's fair
because it's like, well, Richardson deserved the title raise to secondary coach as much as Bala deserved a co-DC title, given the fact that the other D coordinator left. If Belichick was still here, I think this is a different conversation. I think maybe the chemistry that those two had working together this past season, maybe Bala's like, hey, you know what, I'll take the pay raise, but I don't need a title because Steve already knows how important I am and those sorts of things. I think maybe you can skirt on that, but given you go external with the DC hire, again, no fault on that because, again, Ryan Walters is very good qualified defensive coordinator, so it wasn't a bad hire, but you could understand why Bala's like, man, like, what am I doing here? And then Billy Napier calls up and says, hey, by the way, I got this opportunity for you. You want to come potentially interview for it? Yeah, you want to get on that plane and do it. And once he got on that plane, I don't think he was ever coming back.
So let's dive into that a little bit because one thing that I think is really interesting is every single hire, and Brennan Carroll, or every single external hire. Let's start there. All of Washington's external hires that Jedd Fisch made that he didn't bring up from Arizona, those are the first ones that were out, or the first two that were out the door. We saw Steve Belichick depart, which, no shocker there once his dad got a job. Vinny Sunseri gets a defensive coordinator job at Jacksonville State, is there for, 10 days, and then takes another co-DC position on Florida staff. So we've seen all of these guys get promotions. Brennan Carroll, you can say what you will. He's going to the NFL, also going to be with his dad, getting maybe a slight promotion from being an offensive coordinator that doesn't call plays to offensive line coach and run game coordinator. So there's that aspect of it as well. And then Bala just completes that. All of the external hires that Jedd made left after a year. I'm not speculating about anything there because that's just, it is what it is. And then we saw the other interesting thing there. Sorry, one more thing that I had on that was the off-field guys too. Josh O'Mora gets a promotion to go to Arizona State. Armand Hawkins gets a promotion to go to North Carolina. So it's nice to see that that you clearly have an eye for talent because these guys are very sought after around the country, but it doesn't make it less frustrating.
Exactly. I don't think it's a discussion point. It's a talking point because it's not necessarily a bad indicator because for everything that might be gleaned bad about, all one of your guys decided they're out. Well, maybe that's because they also got better opportunities. In this case, Bala gets elevated back to a co-DC title, Vinny, co-DC, et cetera. You go on down the list. All those are all promotions. Same thing with O'Mora, promotion. So it would be different if coach is leaving to take a straight up analyst role. Like he's going to be an analyst at like Ohio State or something like that. And it's not even a DC. Like, because those are the type of things where you look at it and say, okay, maybe we got a problem here. The only thing that that just really makes things interesting, and we did touch on it before the show, was like clearly Jedd was somewhat blindsided by this because on one level they had that press conference on Monday and all the coaches were there except for Brennan Carroll. So it kind of was understood, all right, this is the day we're going to do this. Like, all right, BC is going to go. You hired Chip Kelly on Sunday. I thought maybe they were out of the woods, but then early Monday morning the reports come out. Think about this. Now think about that report from Tom Pelissero that I mentioned with Jimmy Doherty. What if he took off for one of those NFL quarterback jobs or passing game? Again, a level up, first-time NFL coach. So these are all promotions, but at the same point, just like Jedd came into last year, which was we don't have the transfer portal. We're losing we got to build a whole new staff, and your staff wasn't done until mid-February. For a second consecutive year, now your staff ain't done in the early part of February.
So I agree with you there. I will say the position is in a lot better shape, in my opinion, with the guys that are coming in terms of both the transfer portal and the high school class, which is refreshing, especially when you think about, I got to say this again. I know I said it the other day, but Zajas Randy-Saleh jumping all the way up into the top 40 of On3's national rankings, like well-deserved, first of all, but second of all, it makes you feel a little bit better about the position because there's so many local guys. Right, you got a couple guys from the state of Washington. You have three of them actually. You have somebody who played in the state of Washington, Buddha Al-Ukta, somebody who's played for Jedd Fisch and Jacob Manu. So there's probably still going to be a lot of continuity at that position. But the last thing I want to mention, Lars, is they're going to go external with this hire. I feel like that's pretty obvious, just given what the coaching staff looks like at this point in time. And a name I'm going to bring up, who we brought up at safety, is Grant O'Brien, where he's been a safeties coach for the majority of his career, but this is a move where if you want to bring in a guy like that because you just want a talented coach on your staff, that would be a really interesting name. We're going to have more on that as the situation continues to develop because, Lars, more bad news. Esun Tafa is back on the market. which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listing. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat, and I couldn't believe the value. It was a steal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It's so reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So Lars, this one was not necessarily a shock, especially when you read the comments they had surrounding his decommitment. Esun Tafa, 4-star interior offensive lineman from Corner Canyon High School in Utah, has officially decommitted from Washington. Let's start with the bad news. It's that.
It is, but it's not unexpected. A, after the Brennan Carroll news, and B, honestly, even before that, where the entire Utah, when we've been talking about the what is it, the NCAA 24, like the send all, empty the house, run the house.
Send the house.
Send the house. Where Utah did that for just a spring visit, where it was like just a mid, early, late. And so, but then during that visit, he said that when he went to the junior day, I believe, said he was going to be back for an official visit. And I think at that point, it was like, okay, even before we knew he was coming up in March for the junior day at UW, it was like, this is going to be a long, drawn out. And by the way, he's a talented player, so he's going to take time in the process regardless.
So absolutely, I'll keep it right there because, you hit the nail on the head. He already said he was going to take an official visit to Utah, that Washington had. It's not that Washington, he was still locked into his commitment, everything like that. Still, it seems like he'll be coming up on March 8th for the junior day, and mentioned that Washington is still in the running. He told Blair Angulo that, said the door's not closed there. I think he said Brennan Carroll's name 3 or 4 separate times just in the span of that article that Blair Angulo posted. So it's very clear why he committed to Washington. He made that very, very clear time and time again. That was one thing we said after the news that Brennan was going to go elsewhere broke, was we'd be concerned there. We didn't know it would be imminent, but there was something to keep an eye on. And of course it happens very shortly after. And as I look at it, I'm not shocked where, Utah is pushing hard. USC has made a big push. And for a player of his caliber, he's going to want to explore all his options as he builds a relationship with Michael Switzer. And is going to get an opportunity to meet him when he gets to campus. So again, it's nice to know that Washington's still in the race, but it's still an unfortunate loss at this point in time.
Yeah, but at the same point, I mean, I'm not going to be a spoiler here, but I remember talking to just kind of a side note in the same sort of segment, kind of because it shares the same undertone, where I asked Wasi, is there anything that would make you back off your commitment to Washington? Which is an unfair question to ask a recruit, which, again, total transparency on that. Because, again, he's a 26 recruit committing in late 25. So has over a year to still sign. And he said, well, the only thing that would really make me reconsider is if there was a coaching change or the coaches left. Well, Bala left.
Yeah.
Belichick left. If he were to back off, just like with Esun Tafa, that doesn't mean he still couldn't circle back, and that certainly doesn't mean the next linebacker coach and et cetera won't follow suit. Just like Michael Switzer has probably met him, or at least in passing, or had talked to him, because again, as the assistant O-line coach, as an analyst, you can play that. When recruits come on campus, handshakes and things like that. I don't know how much contact they can have in general, but I do know, like, again, this day and age, who cares what the NCAA thinks? They probably have at least some underlying relationship. But again, compared to what it was with BC, it's like, hey, okay, if he's going to leave, also consider Switzer because he's a good dude. We already have an established relationship. I want to get to know him more, but I'm going to reopen things. And I wanted to ask Jedd his philosophy on that because he hasn't really talked about that, where Chris Peterson was one where, hey, if you take visits or if you acknowledge other offers or whatever, like your commitment's over. You can't do that in this day and age. Like, as much as Coach Peterson might want to, it's like, until that paperwork is signed, you're just competing for visits because you have unlimited official visits now, or official visits. And so, instead of taking just 5 and Washington being one of potentially 5, it's like, no, you can take 20 official visits. It doesn't matter. And that's now you're playing the long game. And now Jedd's in a way not back to square one, but you're also not that far ahead as where you were with BC.
So I agree with you. I think that they still would have been a significant step ahead with Brennan Carroll because of the relationship that he had with that. Like, I want to keep harping on that because that's what he kept saying. Where every time you'd ask Esun Tafa about Washington, he would bring up Brennan Carroll. And he'd say, yeah, Brennan Carroll is a big reason that I wanted to make my commitment because I really trust him. I really like my relationship with him. So that's something that needs to be said. And he was the top interior player on Washington's board. We know that. That's something that has been reported a couple of different times where they were really, really high on what he could bring to the table. And just to continue with what that might just do for this 2026 class, this is a guy you got to find a way to get back in the boat. And it's nice to know that you're still in the mix with a lot of the other, traditional powers in this area of the country, whether it be down in Utah, USC, Oregon, whoever else it might be. So there's a long road ahead to secure his commitment, resecure it. But another name that Lars, I think deserves to be pointed out here is Idris Randy Saleh. That's a guy who did commit to Kalen DeBoer and that staff, backed off as soon as everything happened there, and then still recommitted over the summer. So it might be a little bit different where he's not a guy from the state of Washington. So things might be a little bit different there, especially considering where Utah is in that process. But it's still something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age with recruiting, as long as you're in the conversation, I don't think Washington's going to fall out of favor for him. They will still get an official visit from Tafa. I guarantee you that. Do they sign him? That's the other question. Can Switzer build that gap? And really, I think the onus goes back to, like it does with every program, the head coach. Can Jedd put a product on the field this fall, empower Michael Switzer to say, hey, you know what? Look at how good he is. Like our offensive line in general, we can churn out dudes. Look at what we did at Arizona. Switzer can carry on what BC did. Yeah, he doesn't have the Carroll last name, just like Walters doesn't have the Belichick last name. But your last name doesn't guarantee you success. No offense. It's just it's a fact of the matter. We could end up having Walters turn out to be a better coach. We could end up having a better offensive line product with Switzer.
Sure.
And right now, we have not seen that, and we're not going to for at least another 6 months until they start playing games in September. So that's the long game, the frustrating game you have to play with recruiting is. And in this day and age, it's actually a better way to go about it than trying to sell, and try and put, no, stay with us. Because it almost looks like you're like that desperate girlfriend or boyfriend that's like hanging, please don't break up with me. Please don't break up with me.
Yeah,
if you have to beg, you've already lost the high ground and argument. And
it's unfair. It's unfair to the kid to say, all right, yeah, I really did trust Brennan Carroll, and we just saw Robert Bala decide to back off where, yeah, he had a whole bunch of guys commit to him and he goes to Florida. Why would it be fair to have a kid who's not signed still have to honor that in the same vein? If it's going to go one way, it's got to go both ways. So I don't know if there's much more to say about that aspect, but Lars, we got to dive into what this means about the 2026 class, where we look at this offensive line, whether it be some of the other top prospects that Washington might be after, where Tommy Tofi's one, Sam Utu is another, or there are a whole bunch of big name prospects on the West Coast that this staff can reel in. And when you had someone like Esun Tafa on the boat, it's a lot easier to sell the, hey, yeah, we know there's this really talented guy who you might have seen on the circuit. Maybe you played against from the same state or anything like that. It's easier to sell having all those guys team up together, but not having Esun Tafa is going to make that a lot harder.
It will, but again, yes, everyone is a pawn in this situation, I guess, because it's like, well, you don't want to use Esun Tafa and say, hey, this is the reason why we are such a good program. It's like, no, the current players on your roster dictate that. The current roster dictates whether or not Esun should want to play. The development of certain young guys and, can Carver Willis come in and hold it down? It's like, wow, I could be a premium left tackle. I could be a premium guard. I can do whatever in this case. This is why college coaches get paid millions and millions and millions of dollars. Nobody wants to be a babysitter. Now imagine you have to scheme and do all the things for Saturday and prep and do all those factors. And then also, by the way, massage a relationship that is still a long game. Like even if Tafa stayed committed this entire time and took visits but never publicly decommitted, and then at the very end of the process signed with some other program, it makes zero difference. So at least this is just being transparent and honest about it, which I can respect.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, modern recruiting has taken. I don't even want to say it's taken different turns. It's just completely changed. And as we move forward in this world of NIL, of no more NLIs, like there's a lot that we're going to continue to see change. And it's much better to get this out of the way now and say, yeah, I'm still, considering Washington. I still want to make sure that they're a school that I'm keeping in touch with and everything like that. But at the same point, it's not fair to say I'm going to honor this commitment when I'm going to continue taking visits, continue doing other things. So just something we wanted to make sure we touched on there, because that is a big loss in the 2026 class. But Lars, Jordan Washington is going to be a big addition to Washington's offense, which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions of winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at Travis Kelce for more receiving yards and more for Jalen Hurts' rushing yards as well. What I love most, fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab to tail on any of the super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKDOWNCollege. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKDOWNCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So, Lars, let's dive into what Jordan Washington could mean for the Huskies this season. I'm really excited about what he brings to the table. When I look at him, I see, just the elite speed. I see somebody who can make plays as a receiver out of the backfield. And we saw what Jedd Fisch wants to do for him in the run game, scheming up ways to get him touches outside the tackles, utilize his speed, get him into space quickly. I love everything that they could do with him. And then Scotty Graham kind of took it a step farther on Monday, where he was asked about the 2 running backs that he has coming back in Jonah Coleman and Adam Muhammad. And of course, 2 very talented guys. We expect big things out of them this season as well. But the first thing he says is you can't forget about Jordan Washington, because he's going to be a really big part of this offense.
Yeah, as much as I like to talk about all when I'm right, when I said I was 2-0 and you gave me credit for being 3-0 in the preseason predictions, where I completely whiffed on, but I'm going to kind of use that and just say, you know what, we're just going to push it a year. The foundation year kind of moved. The foundation moved, so we're kicking all the predictions down a year. Yeah. With Jordan Washington, I thought absolutely he was the guy who could make an impact on special teams, which is something Scotty Graham highlighted when I asked how can the freshman make an impact? And he said, make an impact on special teams and just be available. And to his credit, I know Jordan Washington at one point was not dinged up, not severely hurt. Didn't look like it was a major injury, but kind of just nicks and bumps and bruises and things.
Yeah, early in the season.
Exactly. But then he got in at Penn State, and that was one where I'm like, okay, if we're going to play him in this game, why did we not see him a little bit more? But you can kind of understand why. But that's for all the reasons why we think he's going to emerge in 2025, because he's got that electric game-breaking speed, because he can do it. Just get the ball in his hands is the key. Where, yes, as a running back, but whether it's out of the backfield, pass catcher, or in special teams, I think he's going to find a way to have at least 1 touchdown in every single facet next season.
So that would be a lot of fun. I don't know when the last time we saw somebody with a receiving, rushing, and it was last season because it was Roma Dunze. Yep. I was going to say, I'm stopping myself there. I know that one. I know the answer to that. But I couldn't agree with you more, because it's something where when we talked about him, once he committed, once he got on campus, it was in a role like Savon Ahmed had as a freshman when Myles Gaskin was still around, where it's lining him up out wide and giving it to him on a fly sweep or something like that. Give it to him in the backfield in 2 back sets. There are so many different things you can do with a player of that caliber. And it's really fun to see, because it all keeps the defense honest. And when we look at, what Washington was able to do in 2024, a lot of it certainly was hindered by the offensive line. And it's something where I know Jedd expects significant improvements out of the offensive line. I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like in spring practice with, somebody like Gieran Hatchett stepping in, assuming he's healthy enough to participate, what Paki Fee now might look like after a year in the strength and conditioning program, what Zach Henning might look like in his 3rd season on campus. So there's a lot to like about, you got something? Yeah, go for it.
Did you see the photo on the snow day of Adam Muhammad's guns?
Yeah, that's
guns. I'm talking he is full double decker buses up on those shoulders.
every time I like Adam Muhammad, we see him step on the football field. I just think of what Scotty Graham said when he first got here and said he's going to be lunch money. Then, just again, to quote Scotty is always wonderful. You know what that is in high school? Somebody comes up to you and says, give me your lunch money. No. And as he said, no, yes. No, give me your lunch money. He said, that's Adam Muhammad. And it's not just the power, it's the speed as well. And when I think about what those two guys could do together in a backfield, it's really, really exciting because you have somebody who can come downhill, run between the tackles, do everything you want in terms of a Big Ten running back, and then somebody who can really just stretch the field for you laterally, vertically, and just somebody who, when he has space and the ball in his hands, good things are going to happen because he can make plays. And that's a really exciting thing to think about with Damon Williams, because it's the exact same thing. And it's something where there's a certain level of Washington needing to adapt to Big Ten play in the trenches that you and I have talked about that is very, very important for success. But at the same time, another thing you and I talked about that we saw pop up at different points last season is the Big Ten teams are going to have to adapt to what these West Coast teams like to do in terms of covering every blade of grass, getting your best athletes into space with the ball in their hands and allowing them to do what they do best. And that's something that with a trio of guys in the backfield like that, 4 when you count Jonah Coleman, you can do a lot of good things on offense.
Exactly. I mean, it's the Swiss Army knife. It's the give yourself. You don't need to have one, bruiser back. 20 to 25 carries. Like if you got one, great. Like maybe in a different, at a different school, Adam Muhammad could be a 25, 30 carry guy. But I think even look in the NFL. Can you name me anybody that really averages 22 plus per game carries wise? It used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be like every team had at least one dude that was having a 20, and then you had maybe like a 10 or a 12, and then you had like a 3 to 5 guy. That was your Jordan Washington. No, now it's like 9, 9, 9. Or, you kind of just you split it up that way where you have no reason not to get all these different types of bodies involved in the offense. And Scotty's talked about it where there's 3 ways you make an impact: know how to block, know how to run between the tackles, and know how to be a pass catcher. If you can do all 3 of those things, that's how you're going to see the field. But until you can do all 3, you're not going to see the field. And again, like Scotty always puts it out on Twitter. And when we had that meeting last July, and he was talking about Julian McMahon coming up on campus, and apparently one of the parents that was parent of a kid asked him, like, "Hey, what made you come to Washington?" He's pointed right at Scotty Graham. Like that's why, because Scotty's been there, did it at Ohio State, did it in the NFL, went to Arizona, did at different stuff at Arizona State. He knows how to develop you, but you just have to bring everything to the table. And every single one of those guys, for one way or another, like Jordan Washington might not be the greatest pass blocker in the world, but I have an idea of like he might not necessarily need to be because he's going to be used differently. So there's ways they can get him on the field. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do everything that Jonah does in order to see the field.
So that's one thing that I think we can touch on for a minute or two, because I think you did a great job of identifying it there right now. And just to wrap up everything from today's show together, it's a lot of it is about talent evaluation. And that's something that Jedd Fisch's staff has shown to be really good at. And I think that Scotty Graham is one of the best talent evaluators on this staff, because I've been really impressed with the guys that he's been able to bring in, where it's like the first one is Adam Muhammad, right? Like that's the very first guy he brings in. And Lars, I will never forget, you talk about just what he looks like physically a few minutes ago. I'll never forget walking in on the first day, and as you and I are trying to just still learn the roster, learn the numbers of some of the new guys, especially, when there were so many new guys this last spring, and looking at Adam Muhammad being like, which guy is that? That's this guy who's like an 82 on 247 Sports. Like that's him, watching him move and everything like that. He's done a really great job with that. Getting Jordan Washington, 4-star from Long Beach. Like that's a little bit easier in terms of the talent evaluation with that kind of speed. But then I look at it this year, you've got 2 really nice backs in Quade Carr and Julian McMahon. You look at 26, he's got Ansu Sanoe committed, a big physical runner. He's done a really good job with that. And I think that echoes throughout Jedd Fisch's staff, which has been really nice to see as, now he's looking for another position coach.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, it's such an interesting conundrum, because it's like, well, how do you lose so many guys? But then it's like, because I developed so many guys. And you look at every single move that is being made. Everybody that has left Jedd in some way, shape, or form has been an elevation. There hasn't been anybody that left and you're like, oh, well, that was a bad hire. It's like, no, it's just you got to find the next one. You got to find the next one. And that's what coaches get paid to do. It's what Jedd gets paid $7.5 million plus to do. And when you have that NFL Rolodex and you have the NFL experience and all those sorts of things, that becomes selling points for development, which is what Jedd is emphasizing in the whole process of elimination, where every year you're going to be getting to do something. Last year, Jordan Washington only got a couple of games to bring this segment back full circle. Next season, now without Sam Adams, without a couple other guys in that room, you're going to say, now those carries will be there for you as long as you're healthy.
Right.
Like, especially when it comes to young players, like you will see the field. There's only one person that can stop you, and that's you. Nobody else is going to stop you from doing it, short of, okay, let's be real. Like, none of the freshman quarterbacks are beating up Demar this year.
So I'm glad you mentioned just the carries aspect that's going to be there for him this year, because Cam Davis isn't in the room anymore either, where that's another thing that's just not, I don't want to say it's holding him back, because Cam certainly deserved to have a bunch of carries last season, but it's one of those things where you look at it and it's, Jonah's going to lead the room in his final season. Obviously we know that. And then Adam is going to see a bigger workload than he did last year. There's no doubt about that. And then right behind him is Jordan Washington. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Jedd Fisch, Scotty Graham, this offensive coaching staff want to divvy up snaps, because it's more keeping Jonah fresh. I don't know if that's going to be the right way to think about it, because, we saw him get dinged up a little bit last year, as Jedd would mention at various points that the season went along. Of course, you want to keep him healthy, but you want to make sure that Adam Muhammad, who's going to take over and be that workhorse back in 2026, that he's got a fair amount of experience under his belt, like you got with him and DeMont Williams this past season. And then Jordan Washington as well. How is he going to fit into this mix? I think we're going to see a fairly significant role for him, and I think it's going to be in a whole lot of different roles, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please, if it's 5-star reviews, it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Friday.